The host needs to enable that.
Right.
So this hosting needs to enable that. Can't do it without him.
What do you can make it sound? No,
They've muted themselves. So you won't hear anything from them. There is sound.
Can't hear. Oh, here we go.
Is there some way to mute the voice and just to get some other way of proving that this person is now injected? Because that voice is so irritating.
Okay.
Think on the facial recognition thing.
Oh, I don't know.
Thank you.
So you've got audio enabled, so they can hear you, but you don't have your camera on, so they
I
can
got
see you.
camera.
You need to turn that on over here. There you go. There's your camera as well. Screen sharing means that they can see what's on your laptop screen, not that they can see you. That makes sense. So if you pull up a document on the screen, they can see that document. That's what screen sharing is.
Okay. Ready, guys? Sure.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Silverleaf Investments 12J Capital Venture Fund webinar. Sorry.
1 second. Sorry.
Sorry, guys. Can everyone just please put their mics on the mute for the duration of the webinars until we're ready to take questions? Thank you all for your patience. So today's webinar is to discuss the Silverleaf Investments 12J Capital Fund that's been started recently here in South Africa. I am Yawi Boa of the New Age Cannabis podcast, a podcast all about cannabis in Africa and its very, very amazing possibilities for changing the continent. Today we're here with Cliff Hisano and Pierre van der Hoeven from the Silverleaf's Investment Fund. They'll be telling us more about exactly how the fund works and why the fund is going to be something that's amazing for Africa, for the continent. Pierre van der Hoeven has an extensive history in the South African media industry. He's been involved in the cannabis industry, however, since 2016, where he's driven a lot of change in South Africa with regards to setting up different associations, for making it more palatable for governments to talk about and start to deal with the fact that cannabis is an industrial crop and commercial crop. Pierre is a CA with amazing business skills, and we're very happy to have him here today to actually tell us about the fund. Also with us is Cliff Hisano, who I will describe as a serial entrepreneur, a brilliant man who has many different cannabis companies, including, this is a soft plug, Cannabis Africa, Taste of Cannabis and is also head of the Cannabis Trade Association of Africa. Gentlemen, thank you so much for this webinar and telling us more about how people can invest in cannabis in Africa. Can you just tell us more about exactly why you set up the fund?
Yes, yeah, thank you so much for facilitating for us. It's a very exciting time. It's exciting for me personally, it's exciting for our team, it's exciting for the industry, and I think for the whole country. And we're bringing a new investment vehicle into a brand new asset class. I'm proud of my team. I'm very grateful and privileged to be involved in this new fund, and I'm looking forward to this webinar and to sharing this opportunity that we've created for people to invest in cannabis. So thank you to everyone for joining. I hope that you can hear us clearly and we've got through some of those initial technical hurdles. This is going to be an exciting conversation about the Silverleaf Investment Fund. Cannabis is the next big thing, and it's opening up globally. And it's happening now in South Africa. The reality is that it's here. A lot of people have worked hard, they've sacrificed a lot to get us to this point, and a lot of the shadow aspects of cannabis and the social stigma is falling away and has fallen away, and it's now a legal, investable industry. And it's a great time to get in. It's an early stage, things are on the ground, a lot of the landscape has been set. Also, it's almost as if it's the time when cell phones arrived or when the internet arrived. You know, it's a brand new industry, and everyone knows cannabis. It's not something new. The scaife, the getting high, that's the recreational side of it, and that is not legal at this stage. The medical side is, and the industrial side is, and we're very excited to unpack that with you and those opportunities. But I just want to start off by saying that on the industrial side, this is a brand new crop. What I mean by brand new crop is, imagine if millies were illegal and we didn't have corn syrup and we didn't have corn flakes. And all of a sudden I said to you, hello world, here's millies. It's exactly the same now with hemp. You're saying, hello world, here is hemp. This incredible plant that has so many uses and that is going to touch on so many industries with its application. I didn't understand the plant until I went to a museum in Amsterdam for cannabis and hemp and looked at all of the things that it can be used for. And it's incredible. It can be used for food, medicine, clothes, building materials, canvas, rope, even batteries. They're now talking about it replacing lithium ion. So it's a very, very exciting industry. It's an exciting time, and I'm very happy to be here to chat to you about the Silverleaf Investment Fund.
Fantastic. So I'm sure you guys saw that there was an amazing opportunity with the fact that the industry struggled to get funding. So with regards to that, why would you think that cannabis is actually a good investment? Pierre, if you can answer that one. Why would you think cannabis is actually a good investment that requires funding in the current context in South Africa and obviously the rest of the continent?
Yeah, firstly, I just want to say welcome to everybody. This webinar was set up at a very late notice. I know many of the people that have subscribed, and just a big shout out to the industry. There's clearly a lot of interest in this industry, demonstrated by how many people we have actually joined this webinar. And I think, in a way that answers the question. Cannabis time has come. South Africa is extremely well positioned. We've got a long, deep history. We've got hundreds of thousands of existing farmers who've been put in an illicit box. We've got the fantastic climate. And overseas, there's a global movement around cannabis. It's been legalized in Canada. We've had corporate activity. We've got massive companies, billion-dollar companies. And it's a very fast-changing environment. We've launched this fund at the right time, I think. It's probably the fastest growing industry in the world right now. Just this week, there was a transaction that's for $7.2 billion where a big pharma company bought a big cannabis company. So the time is right. But there was something lacking in the South African market. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of skill, but there wasn't a professional run investment vehicle to open up the money. So Cliff and I started chatting about this late last year, and we put together this fund in an unbelievable time. And a shout out to the Silverleaf team. They've been absolutely incredible what we've achieved in 2 weeks. If you think we only really decided to do this year, which is not very long ago. So the time is right. We set up a vehicle. The country's right. The industry is booming, and now for investors, you now have a credible vehicle. And when I talk about a credible vehicle, anybody who earns a salary pays tax. And there are a lot of high net worth individuals out there. The Section 12J fund provides you an immediate return on your money by getting a tax deduction. We'll get into more detail about that. But the key message is, please go to your friends, your family, go to your constituency, get people to invest. The more money we receive, the more we can spend in the industry. So let's do this together.
So whilst you're there, in terms of scalability, how scalable is the cannabis industry from your perspective, from where we are now and where it could possibly go in South Africa?
The industry is absolutely massive. It's valued now at about $30 billion US, estimated to go to $100 billion US. Multiply that by a factor, and it's a massive industry. We're really at the beginning of it. We have the beginning of the medical cannabis market. The adult use market hasn't even started. And the hemp market, we're all waiting for the announcement, which we believe is imminent, where hemp will be declared a crop. So we're really at the bottom of the curve. It's going to be big. If you take hemp, as Cliff touched on,
Bigger than millies.
bigger than millions. We can house, we can clothe, we can feed, we can save the environment, we can clean the air, we can do that all with one plant.
Fantastic. Okay, I think I'm going to ask, just change tack a little bit. So why specifically South Africa, and why now? Because if you look at obviously the developments that have happened in other countries, they're far ahead of us. So why would you want to start it now in South Africa, where it hasn't even yet been fully regulated and legislated within the law of the country? Why is it the right time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if many people know this, but a third of the world's cannabis actually traditionally has been grown in the southern hemisphere and in southern Africa. And that's on the illicit market. We've got perfect climate, we've got good clean air, good clean water, obviously not everywhere, but in the key places. And the right climate, we've got a low cost base, rand cost base, dollar revenues. It could become a production powerhouse for the world. But that all is predicated on government getting behind this, which they are, legislating correctly and opening up the market for trade. And that is a key reason why we started this fund, so that we can get the industry going and get the market going. And the same with our trade association, is we need to get onto the global stage. Nobody's waiting for us. It's always, as I was saying, it's a commoditized crop already. It's not avocados and it's not soya. It's got a much wider application. But we as a country need to get things going much more rapidly than we have. And yes, COVID threw us off. But now is definitely the time for South Africa, for Southern Africa, to stand up and produce medical grade and industrial hemp. And it's crazy that we are importing car parts that are produced with hemp, and that we're importing hempcrete where we could be producing here in our wonderful African South.
With all the availability of product, yeah. So in terms of government support, do you think there's government support? I think I'll hand it over, specifically in terms of the finance sector, to get this actually done in South Africa, and what the actual impact of the structures, the current structures and systems that the country has, how will that impact the success of the fund?
Yeah, thanks, Yala. I get the hot potato. I think the political will is there. It's absolutely across the provinces, premiers, departments, people have declared the want to make the industry happen. But as in many other areas of our country, the implementation and delivery, in my personal opinion, is lacking. But you start with political will. We need jobs. We need rural economic development. We need to recover from COVID. We've had the agricultural sector being one of the best sectors performing during COVID. We got land issues. So it's absolutely perfect. And in my opinion, is in many ways the silver bullet for our country. What we really need now is a bit more movement from government. We do understand the work environment has been difficult because of COVID. We've had other issues like public health, but we really need government to come together and get enabling legislation written properly. You asked about the finance sector. I think the finance sector, the private sector, sorry, there's a lot of investment that's already gone into the industry. There are a lot of entrepreneurs. We have an existing growing industry. We have a huge amount of passion. But similar to government, we are uncoordinated. We're all doing our own thing. We're not talking as a single voice. We need to come together. Both Cliff and I have gone down this road and started industry associations. But we really need one single association to rise from the ashes, unite the private sector. The private sector, with just cause, have been reluctant. They think it's risky. They think there's too much grey area. And they also need to stop behaving like commercial banks and they only lend you money when you don't need the money. I think we need a bit of risk taking by both the government and the private sector. And again, this is the reason why we set up this fund. We're trying to say good corporate governance combined with skills and passion in the right environment, and we've got 1 + 1 = 3. So I think we've all got a lot of work to do. But I would appeal for coordination, communication, cooperation. This cake is so big. This attitude of, I don't want to talk to my competitor. This cake is so big, grow the cake. There's space for everybody, but we all need to get our act together. The people of South Africa deserve it. The delays that we as the industry have been partly responsible for are criminal. I think it's time we looked in a mirror and said we owe this to the people of this country to build an industry, a new kind of industry, and build it from the bottom. We've got to start with a small farmer, and we've got to end up with billion-dollar South African companies, and everybody's got a place.
Now, I'm going to segue a little bit into the technical side. So the vehicle you guys have chosen to do this is Silverleaf Investments. That's specifically a 12J company. Now, obviously, that's within the South African law and is an entity that will be the one that will be taking the investments. So can you just explain to us exactly what a 12J investment is and why you feel that's the correct vehicle in the current market? Okay,
so let me just start with a fund. A fund is a whole lot of people who don't have expertise or time or the inclination want to enter an industry. They go to a fund and they give these people their money on the assumption that they're going to give them back a whole lot more money in a period. Okay. So as a fund, you have an obligation to the people who gave you your money. Imagine a pension fund, for example. You pay your pension. You want that money to be managed properly. Okay. So the first thing is our fund is registered with all the corporate governance institutions. Okay. So there are contracts, there are legal requirements, there's very heavy corporate governance. However, about 5 years ago, the government went to the investment industry and said, we will give a tax incentive to invest in SME, small and medium-sized enterprise. And the way they did that is they said, if you've got taxable income and you invest in a 12J, that's the name of the clause in a tax act. If you invest in a 12J fund, we'll give you 100% tax deduction of your investment. So if I take 100 Rand now and I'm in the maximum tax bracket, the day I put it in the fund, I get 45 Rand back because I get a tax. I either get a tax deduction, or if I'm a salary person and I've already paid the tax, I physically get the cash back. So it's a huge incentive put in place by government to incentivize small companies. They said, you can't go for big companies, so there's a limit. You can't invest in a company bigger than 50 million Rand. They also said, we don't want you putting your money in this tax year and taking it back the next tax year. So they made a 5-year limit. So that in very, very broad terms is what this is about. The government is incentivizing the public to invest in the fund, which is very strictly governed. And that fund, which is us, must not invest in an industry. We've chosen cannabis and hemp as the industry, and we must generate a return. And then we must make sure the investors get their money back plus a return.
And this is a first of its kind investment vehicle in terms of cannabis. We weren't sure if cannabis could be included in this 12-day structure that he was talking about. And when we were throwing the idea around, GrowVest are one of the leaders in the 12-day space. So we approached them to explore the idea. And not only was it possible, but GrowVest were excited about the opportunity, and they said to us, we want to get on board and get involved with you guys. So they are our partners in this fund.
So in that case, I think let's go more into Silverleaf Investments. Who is Silverleaf Investments, and why do you guys think that you're the right fund for South Africa with regards to the cannabis space?
So Pierre and I are heavily invested and immersed in the industry in our own businesses. So we bring landscape and domain knowledge and extensive networks, both locally and globally. And then I tapped my network for some seasoned business people that I knew who were semi-retired and were looking for opportunities. We explored the cannabis space. They were excited to get involved. And they come with the scars and with the lessons learned and with a lot of experience in other industries that can be brought to bear there. One of them, Mr. Paul Bacher, has been extensively involved in mentorship and in mentoring other businesses over many years. He started the national mentorship movement. And our other non-executive director, Daryl Weiss, has been in the FMCG space for quite a long time. He was the MD of Nampak Tissue, and he's a sales and marketing director for Kellogg's, going back to my Millie's example. So we've got a very strong board, and we've also got some key individuals coming onto our investment management committee. One of them is a very successful entrepreneur in the cannabis space in the region. He sold his business to the world's largest cannabis company called Canopy Growth. I think it was in 2018. So he's coming on board as one of our investment committee members. And then I don't know if you want to chat about Sibusiso, who might be joining us as well.
Sibs is another personality in the industry. He's traveled studying cannabis all over the world. He's got his own consulting business, and he's part of Global Go, which is the biggest and probably the most well-recognized global cannabis consulting company. Can I also just add there are two entities. The one is the fund. Okay, that fund is managed. You can call it by the financial services government. It's thick contracts, very strict rules. To set that up costs money. People had to take money at risk. We took money. Our shareholders took money. We put it in. We put it up. We formed a management company, and we are the managers of the fund. So there are checks and balances to make sure that the investors are looked after. And we are now the managers. So we've taken risk, we've gone to market. We're relying on the fact that people are going to invest. If they don't, we lose our money on a personal level. No investors lose their money. If they do, then we're hoping to raise 50 million rand now by the end of February. We're going to do another raise in August. And who knows, in 5 years' time, we could be a 1 billion rand fund, and we could be making a meaningful contribution to the economy of South Africa.
So where exactly do you think the opportunities lie in that case within the South African cannabis industry? Is it more on the cultivation, the growing? Is it in beneficiation? Is it in processing, manufacturing? Where in the value chain have you guys noticed the biggest opportunity so far?
Yeah, so let's just talk value chain. The answer is the opportunities lie in every element of the value chain. However, where are we now? Where's the industry? Where's South Africa? Where's the global industry? How's it changing? So let's just, the value chain, let's just say cultivation, processing, manufacturing, distribution, retail, and then on top of that are services. So in those simple headings, that's the value chain. We're looking at investments in every aspect, including some you wouldn't think of, like training and education. So where are we now? We're coming out of a legislative process where high barrier to entry medical cannabis is enabled by the law. Okay, so obviously the opportunities are there. They're cultivation based, but you've got to sell your product. So extraction, you've got to sell it to the export market, distribution, off-take agreements. You need laboratories to service it, but we're at the beginning of that. So these industries are being built. Cliff came from the other side, and you can talk a little bit about that. They brought in products, and they've already started retail. So you go, you'll see CBD products in Dischem, you'll see CBD products in Cliff's company in Sandton City. I was there on Saturday looking at his operations. So I'm giving you a bit of a broad answer. The opportunities are everywhere. Where I believe cultivation is exciting right now, but there are many other services where there's phenomenal growth. potential right now. We're going to talk about how we evaluate it. So I'm just going to leave it there. I hope that answers the question.
If I can just pick up on that. So right now, at the opposite end of the value chain, to what Pierre was talking about, on the cultivation side, on the retail and distribution side, and the wholesaling, there's huge global opportunities. The world has a fantastic appetite for CBD products and THC products, specifically CBD now in some countries as it legalizes. In South Africa, CBD is a Schedule 0 substance if it's under 600 milligrams, according to our health regulator. And by the way, through our trade association, we are questioning that because in other countries it's much higher. And there's talk around the efficacy and the strength of the doses. But as a Schedule 0 substance, and think Bernardo or Disprin, can be sold in any retail store. The minute it's above 600 milligrams in the pack, it's then a Schedule 4 substance and it needs a script. And THC has moved from Schedule 7 substance, meaning it's a dangerous drug, to a Schedule 6 as a registered medicine, reading the original script. So there is a lot of activity happening at that end of the value chain, and there are cannabis stores and cannabis emporiums and grow shops popping up all over the country. So we are looking at both sides of the value chain because that's where the activity is now, and then we'll fill in the gaps as we go along and as the processing of hemp and the extraction in those laboratories and those requirements are increasing. It just irritates me so much that we are importing CBD when we could be a net grower and producer of it and exporter of it. So a lot of the products that we have on the shelf are with imported CBD.
So how do you think that switching to a local grow would actually impact businesses that are actually already on the branding and retailing side in terms of the revenue generation and also in terms of the margins? What kind of impact would that have? So obviously that would speak to how investable local companies would become.
So it's a good question. There's two things to it. The first one is that I think we have to shorten the value chain. We have to be keeping it in the loop and keeping it local, and obviously exporting and grabbing that opportunity. But in terms of the costing, there's no reason why we shouldn't be producing it much cheaper, and that will affect all of our margins and make it more lucrative. But make no mistake, building a brand takes time and it takes a lot of money. And we're coming across, and this is another reason why we wanted to start the fund, is we're coming across a lot of investable companies that are running out of runway and that need funding. They're passionate people, they're capable, and they need engagement and they need handholding and they need funding. So that's another reason for forming something.
I think so. Sorry.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions on the website, and it's top of mind of our audience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about cultivation because that's where the real activity is happening. So let's try and take a shot of where we are. A number of licenses. SAFRA's getting going. They're starting to issue licenses. So we know on the website there's 13 license operations, and I know that there's a lot of people that got licenses, full-blown medical licenses in the last couple of weeks. So we're getting moving on the medical side. On the hemp side, we had research permits issued by SAFRA. They've been stopped. Okay. The government has declared that all cultivation of hemp will be moved to the Department of Agriculture, or if you want to be the correct term, is the Department of Agriculture, Land Development and Land Reform and Rural Development, the old Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. We believe that there's an announcement that's imminent. Then hemp will be declared a crop. Okay. That is going to instantly unlock the cultivation of the cannabis sativa crop across the country at huge scale. It just excludes high THC plants, marijuana if you want to call it. So we're waiting for that legislation. We don't know the rules. They haven't been clarified. There needs to be some amendments to the schedules, but we are right at the cusp for an explosion of hemp. And we are super excited about that. As far as adult use is concerned, we only have one very significant court case that's going on right now where people are using the private use constitutional hearing and backtracking it to a cultivation model. It's the Hayes Club, and that court case can change things, but it comes from a different space. It comes from the constitutional court hearing about private use. It doesn't come from changing legislation around cultivation. And then we wait with bated breath for the government to start working on the next huge growth area, which is adult use. Because what adult use then opens up is craft cultivation, organic cultivation, small farmers, but they need a market. So currently you can grow for your own personal use, but you can't sell, which doesn't help the economy, and it drives people into the illicit market. We have to stop that. We need to bring the illicit market into the legal market. We can't drive people back into that illicit market. So that's kind of the lay of the land. There's some grey areas, as I've indicated, but there are developments and they're imminent. So if there was a time to get excited around cultivation, the time is now. And I know there is unbelievable frustration out there because people are getting arrested. It is totally, absolutely unacceptable that this is still happening. And the Justice Cluster really needs to get their act together. It is just unacceptable. But there are a lot of other people there that are on the cusp. Be patient. The government is trying. And hopefully we're going to go down. Medical's opened up. Hemp will be opened up. Hopefully, adult use will be opened up in this. And if we can all have one single slogan, get plants in the ground, and then it will feed the value chain. So we're at this really interesting stage right now. And I mean, it could change tomorrow.
And also with the adult use, it's not as if we don't have other industry examples and other industry master plans to look at. There's alcohol, there's tobacco, where it's very clear who can manufacture and how you can retail and distribute. So we're hoping that the government looks at those models and brings some of that thinking across. And then also some people have done incredible work over the last few years, like the Fields of Green and the CBC guys, and looked at how this thing's being done elsewhere in the world, and they brought some of those best practices here. And then the guys at Children's and helped decriminalise it. These people have applied their minds extensively to what it could look like. And we're hoping to get engagement from the government to get this thing legislated properly as quickly as possible.
So if that's the case, then you'd have as you've mentioned numerous times already, you'll have a plethora of companies that you can actually invest into. But how exactly will you be approaching the investments? How exactly will investors be making their money? How exactly the fund structured? And what sort of processes will you be using to assess if there's an investable opportunity or not?
Sure. Okay, so firstly, if you would like us to consider your investment, email us on invest@silverleaf.co.za. Okay. But please be clear about what I'm going to tell you now. We are not ready to invest in qualifying companies yet. Okay, we have a very strict due diligence process and supported by a developing incubation process, because we're fully aware that many of the businesses in the cannabis industry are just not there yet. They don't have proper corporate governance. They need advice from lawyers. They've been putting their efforts into building their businesses, and whereas we are taking investors' money, we have to make sure that everything is managed properly according to good corporate governance. So early March, we will then know how much money we've got to invest. And here's the message. The more money we get in, the more money we can spend. So tell your friends to invest in the fund. Then we will, from March, go into an evaluation process. Now, Cliff and I are being inundated with people saying, I've got a business. And please accept our reticence to engage, because we've got a very formal, proper corporate governance process we have to follow. It will then go into an analysis, an investment committee. We've got Jody and we've got SIBs, and we're going to have independents, we're going to have qualified people. We have to tick the box that the investors' money is protected and well managed. Then we've got to choose qualifying companies. Now we have a restriction. We can only invest 20% of our funds in any single project. So if we get 50 million, there's a limit. If we get 100 million, the limit becomes much higher. Okay, so if we get 100 million, we can invest 20 in one project. Whether we would or not is a completely different question.
It's got to stand on its own merits, number one. Number two, that's a typical venture capital private equity model where you'll look to invest in the team and in the jockey and the people who behind it, not only the business model. Business model obviously has to make sense, and it's about the returns and viability, but it's possibly even more important to see who's driving it and have they thought it through, do they have a plan? That's up.
So one of the takeaways, because I know a lot of people in the audience that's why they're here. Guys, you need a business plan. You need some financial projections. You need to get your corporate governance, register your company, make sure you register for VAT, get your tax clearance certificate, write your model, and ultimately it's got to stand up. And it's going to revolve around the people. Cliff and I know a lot of people in this industry, and unfortunately, in this industry, there are a lot of fly-by-nights. There's a lot of people who, their ideas don't have substance. So we've discussed this extensively. We're going to be looking very carefully at the team. The horse has to stand up, but it's the rider that we're going to back. And the only other last point I want to make is please understand that this is a long-term investment. It was set up like that by the government, and it's also our investment approach. If you think get some money and exit, you want your money back in a year, please don't come. This is a 5-year investment minimum. We're looking for long-term investments. We're looking for sustainable businesses, and we will then bring our huge expertise. And I'm not necessarily talking about only the two of us. The rest of our team bring vast corporate experience, networks. So we will bring our networks. We'll help companies scale. We'll help take them to market. We'll help get the market ready. There were a lot of questions around that, and we absolutely identify that as a key role is to let the entrepreneur be authentic to their idea. Our job is to build an environment that becomes a successful financial business so that we can deliver superior returns back to the people who trusted us with their money.
So on that, I just want to ask, in that case, cannabis obviously is a sunrise industry here in South Africa. So what sort of incubation are we looking at for these companies? Because obviously any company in the space would naturally be somewhat fledgling and would need assistance to get investment. So what sort of incubation structures are you guys looking at to assist these companies to get through that hurdle?
So Cliff's even got a name for the house.
Yeah, so if I can talk to
greenhouse.
that. I am interested in the shop. We have a couple of collaborative workspaces where we host companies across the board. And we've earmarked one of the properties to initiate the process. We've called it the greenhouse. Kind of a cute name, but it's really going to be a place where we can incubate these small businesses, get them to collaborate, and assist them, possibly even in a subsidized capacity. We're still looking at the model, but the idea is to form an incubator for the industry, starting off here in Johannesburg and possibly in other locations.
So in layman's terms, somebody comes to us and they bring us a business plan that's 60% ready. We go, sorry, we cannot tick the corporate boxes. We cannot invest in your business until you have a plan that is 90 or 100% ready. And instead of turning the person away and saying, come back in 6 months' time, we'll sit down and then we say, how can we help you get to that point? And this is where the management company comes in, and the expertise, and we will then get what's the term is investment ready. At that point, we put on our fund hat and we say we want to invest in you. So it's a dual process.
Okay. We can also just talk to returns, because obviously investors want to know how much do I expect and what the returns look like over that time period. So we've said, we've earmarked an internal rate of return of 20% as being the target. We think that some of the opportunities will potentially shoot the lights out and be blue sky returns way north of that. But we wanted to take a conservative approach, and at the end of the day, it's about other people's money and responsibility of that and managing risk. So we've gone for a conservative approach, and we are looking to deliver solid returns. But because it's early stage, we're not sure exactly what the returns will be, and that will all come out in the next few months.
Yeah, again, I know a lot of people in the audience are from the industry. We do know that the returns in this industry are high. They're very high. But what we're not going to do is promise those returns to investors. You've got an incredibly high growth industry and you're getting in early. And that model alone, imagine if you, and this is a true story, where some of the mobile companies expected 100,000 users, and before the end of the month they had 1 million, and their systems fell over, and it happened to Vodacom. We're expecting that kind of explosive growth. We can't guarantee it, but we really do believe that off a low base with explosive growth, you should get exceptional returns.
Yeah, I was there at the beginning of the software industry, the beginning of the internet, so we had got peers there at the beginning of media, so we had got experience in other industries. I think I'm kind of giving my age away, but I think I look young for 62. That's because I use cannabis cosmetics.
Okay, that's great. I think let's go into the final part of the question. Hopefully, we can get some of our viewers to actually give us some questions back. But how would people then engage Silverleaf to actually get their, to actually invest and actually put their money into the fund? How do people go about that? What would be required? And also on the other side, as a company looking for investment, what would I need to do to come to you? You touched on it earlier, but like, what exactly would you guys be requiring?
Okay, so the first step is I suggest everybody go to the website and register for our newsletter, because then we're in communication with you. The people that registered directly for the webinar, we will put you on the database and we'll start communicating with you. And then there are two legs. There's the potential qualifying companies and there's the potential investors. As far as the investors are concerned, very simple. Go onto our website, download the prospectus. It's a 60 to 80 page document, which if you want to read, be my guest.
Got a whole
Download the application form, express your interest, and then you'll get a very clear procedure. You have to do a little bit of FICA, which is the financial. You need to give us proof of residence, fill in the form, and you need to deposit the money before the end of February. If you want to get the tax deduction, you have to get the money in the account before the end of February. Everything is explained on our website. If you're a qualifying company, as I say, there's an email address called invest@silverleafinvestments.co.za. Express your interest and just be patient. We need to get past the end of February to know how much money we've got. We've got a little bit of internal work to get our procedures, and we'll be in touch with you.
And then if I can just make one other comment in terms of the investment and how broadly we would like this thing to be. So the minimum investment is 50,000 Rand, I think we mentioned that. We are in discussions with some companies that chop up those type of investments into making it much more broadly available. So companies like Easy Equities and others that will allow the man in the street to invest even up to as low as 1,000 Rand, and then that gets rolled up into a single investment into Silverleaf investment funds. So we do want the whole country to be able to participate in this industry.
Okay, so in terms of the fund then, what are some other selling points that should get people more excited about investing in cannabis, and especially specifically through Silverleaf's 12J investment fund?
I'll just go over the obvious one. You get the tax deduction. Okay, now that's not limited to individuals. Okay, companies also get a tax deduction.
As well as trusts.
As well as trusts. So if you're a salaried person, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're a trust, or your company invest, they've got different limits. The other key thing is it's under an incredibly well managed, very strict set of protocols. So the risk is completely reduced. If you would like to get a reference on our fund administrators, partners in our business, go to GrowVest. They administer, I think, in excess of 50 funds. So they are highly experienced in their area. If you want to delve a little bit deeper, we've got management profiles. You can see who we are. Go and look at the guys, interrogate it, phone your mates and say, do you know this guy? These are people with history, integrity, and reputations reputations more important than anything else. And the last selling point is to me, if you don't do it now, I suspect you will regret it, because this industry is about to take off. We know that, and the fact that you're on the webinar, I think you know that, so it's got to do with timing.
Yeah, and I always say I've been in other industries, this is my last industry, I'm in it for the long haul, and I think it might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, just getting back to what I originally said when we opened up about minis. You know, this is a whole new crop that we now suddenly have access to as the world to do amazing things with.
Yeah, the one point that I didn't make is, let's consider cultivation. The interesting thing about cultivation is we're competing with Canada. Now they've got -40. Okay, There's snow outside. Their costs of living, the cost of construction is astronomical. We should and we will be a low-cost producer. Does that mean we want to turn Africa into farmers? No, absolutely not. It means we've got a competitive advantage in production. We must then make sure that we develop the industry in terms of beneficiation. We mustn't export raw materials, we must improve them here. And then we must sell them in dollars. So now we've got a business that's got a rand-based cost with a dollar-based revenue. And I think that is a massive attractive point for any form of investor. So that's, there were a lot of questions on the website, but the prices of flour are going down. Yes, they are. My point is that's okay. That suits us. That suits us in South Africa. The more the unit price goes down, the better we position as a country. The question is, does the margin that's left enable us to develop the industry? And I model many of these answers. Absolutely yes. It still leaves margin. But much more importantly, it leaves space for beneficiation, it leaves space for earning foreign exchange, and it results in employment in the rural areas. This is not a development for high-tech, middle of Joburg, Gauteng only. This is an opportunity for the Eastern Cape. This is an opportunity for Limpopo. This is an opportunity for rural economic development and employment. So as long as we structure our industry, we prevent exploitative industries, we prevent multinationals coming in here and turning us into farmers, we prevent bad business ethics. If we block all of those things and we build a new industry, I think we've got something that can benefit all South Africans. And as South Africans, we mustn't think we're isolated from Africa. We're part of Africa. We need to take our expertise and we need to help the other African countries who are entering it. But only if they play nicely. If they lock up their citizens, and if you're in government, you get rich, but your citizens get locked up. Quite frankly, I don't want to work with those kind of people, sorry. But we should develop the African market. The African market is 1 billion people. And we should set an objective as an industry to try and reduce the cost of medicine and improve health for all Africans. So there's another massive opportunity there.
Just to touch on what Pierre's saying, it is a globally competitive market already. It's a commoditized crop out there. South America's come on board, the Colombia's, the Uruguays. So we are in a competitive situation, and we really need to get up to speed as quickly as we can. Other points, as I said, I just want to say it is a lifetime opportunity. We really strongly believe that we've got a solid team, and that the Silverleaf Investment Fund is a great vehicle for people to invest. And also internationally, a lot of guys have looked at our market and they've gone away because they're weary and they don't want to throw their money into a pit. So we're now giving them a safer, investable vehicle to get into the African cannabis space.
So we've got a question here. What about the small entrepreneur? And I think Pierre touched on it earlier when you mentioned incubation. But Monica's asking, what about the small entrepreneur and developing the home grower market as well? How would that come into the space of the investment fund? And how would you guys be able to, or how do you guys see investment in those spaces?
So I'm just going to reiterate that the Section 12J was set up by the government deliberately and by design to fund SMEs. Okay, so the whole structure was designed for the small guy. I absolutely 100% share the view that if you want to improve this country, start with a small business. That's the engine of growth. What's beauty about this industry is it's the one industry where you can really build it from the bottom. But if you do not have the big players, you won't have the value chain and you won't have an industry. So you have to accept there got to be some big companies. So let's assume we've got 1,000 hemp farmers that spring up next year. In spring, 1,000 of them are planting. Who's going to build the factories? So you need the bigger guys, and they are absolutely crucial as part of the value chain. But our philosophy, and we've debated this, is there are endless opportunities for the little guys. Unfortunately, the smaller the enterprise, the higher the risk in many senses. We're going to mitigate that risk and manage it, but we can't. We've always got to think about our investments. Unfortunately, fortunately, we're being entrusted with other people's money. So it's a risk balancing process, but absolutely the opportunity exists for the small guys to get into the industry. The home grower, we have a very unusual situation where you're allowed to grow, but you're not allowed to sell. Then we have the Hayes Club and the other guys in court trying to fix it up. So I think it's going to change. We have a government and a media where the conversation is being absolutely dominated by adult consumption. And on a personal level, I think that's sad, because it's not that it's not important, it's very important. But there are conservative groups in this country, like the churches, and the government's also being wary, watching the international development. So let's start with hemp. Let's start with the medical cannabis industry. Let's develop the industry, and then we're going to get to the adult use industry. But absolutely, we have an existing industry. We supply 30% of the world right now in terms of bud. So we have to develop that industry. And if we can start that tomorrow, I'd be the happiest guy. But if we can only start hemp in the next 6 months, I'll be just as happy. There's one other point that I want to touch on. I don't know how many people know about the global industry, but we are a player. Cannabis is not a South African-owned product. Yes, the heritage of a lot of cannabis comes from Africa, and we need to own that, and we need to be proud of it. But we cannot think we are outside of the world. It's happening all over the world. People are being persecuted around the world. The cannabis tribe is huge. In America, where the big money is going to come from, cannabis is illegal at a federal level. So you're getting a lot of activity at state level, but it's illegal at a federal level. What does that mean for us? It means that with the Biden administration, those restrictions are going to be relaxed. And when they are done away with, you are going to have a tremendous amount of capital that is already looking at South Africa. And at that point, money will not be an object. So we will get a massive cash inflow, and then they will come along, and they don't want to invest in startups. They don't want to develop incubators. They want to buy the best there is. So if your company is one of those companies, and you are the best you are the best you are in your little niche, the checkbook's coming. So we're going to have this building this industry, but I see a second wave coming of a lot of money. The world knows that when South Africa gets online, we are going to be a major player in this industry.
So here's a question from Brandon. With the Hayes Club court case that you mentioned, let's say, for example, it gets dragged out to 2 years for whatever reason, 2-3 years. What impact would that have on the fund that you're setting up, and in terms of the laws actually being settled and legislation actually being issued? If that court case actually then drags out the whole process, how will that impact starting the fund now?
Okay, so let's go back. We've got a very unique situation in South Africa. We've got the laws unraveling like they are in Europe and America and all over the world. Then we had the Constitutional Court that just said it's legal for private use. An incredible development, and all credit to Gareth Prince and Schindler's team and those kind of guys. It changed it. So the Hayes Club is coming through that private use bill. Now, the government was given until the 18th of September to publish. What are we allowed? We allowed 6 plants, 600 grams. Crazy. It was a dreadful bill. So what they're saying there is you can't exclude people from growing. And we just growers, and we're growing for a fee, but it's for private use. Okay, so it's a fantastic model, but it's trying to go in the private use space. I want us to just legalize private use. I mean, adult use. If we do, then somebody has to supply that market. So in many states in America and in the whole of Canada, there's an adult use market. It is bigger than medical. It is bigger than hemp. It's the biggest segment of the market. So my wish is just say adult use is fine. Then you have dispensaries, and then you have growers. And then everybody can grow and sell. Not for medical, forget medical. And then we've got a whole industry that can come out. So that's the ideal. So these guys are doing us a tremendous favor by challenging the government. But it's not the big price. The big price is, come on, guys, just legalize it for adult use.
Cliff, can you say something on that one?
I was just going to say, it needs to be a free trade, open market where it's governed by the end user's choice. Do you want to use it for medical use? Do you want it to be a medically registered product? Do you want to use it for recreational use or adult use, as we are saying? In which case, it's a quality issue. And talking to that quality issue, when it's a global market coming to buy our medical grade cannabis, I think a lot of people need to understand this when they're thinking, oh, well, I'll be able to export my product. It's not so simple. The international market's looking for three things. Obviously, they're looking for a price point and getting it at a cheaper price point, and because we can grow it more cost effectively here. They're also looking for high quality, and they're looking for compliance. So it has to be that you've got GAP, which is good agricultural practice certificate. You've got a GMP, which is good manufacturing practices. You've got all the compliance certificates. You're producing a high quality, consistent product, and then at a good price point, then we'll be open for business.
Yeah, consistency becomes key where it comes to quality of product, which actually helps the industry to survive. Yes.
I'll tell you a funny anecdote. I spoke to some offtake guys, and what they're getting from the market is that the consumers of adult use overseas want to buy from a small African farmer. They want the real thing coming from Africa. So the potential for the small farmers to develop their own organic brands and export is there. They've said that's what we want. We don't want to buy from the corporations. There's this whole movement about being anti-corporation. They want to go down to the grassroots level. So the opportunity exists, and that's where the real job creation. All those Transkei, Swazi, the Sotho farmers who are currently supplying the word and getting arrested and locked up, we need to free them up, we need to include them in the economy, and we need to create consistent quality, homegrown organic cannabis.
But that assumes that obviously the legislation
we're not there yet.
If there are any other questions, please just post it in the chat and I will ask either Pierre or Cliff to give us a response on that. But I think one thing I might have to just segue into the South African industry. What kind of impact do you think it would have on the current alcohol and tobacco market once cannabis is legalized?
So let's go back a step. When people were anti-legalization, and there are a lot of people in our country who still fear cannabis. We can't condemn them. We were brought up like that. We were taught and we were brainwashed about how evil this thing was. And there were a lot of myths.
Sorry. There's a bit of an important question that's come on the chat from Jeff. What is the fund management cost structure, management fee, and carried interest? Is the question from Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that. It's in my notes. It's 3% raising fee, 2.5% management fee, and then a performance upside. I think, okay.
But in the notion
no,
of
but the much more
so
important question was the previous one.
So Jeff, I hope you got that.
Yeah, so just to clear that up, it's a 3% raising fee, it's a 2.5% management fee, and then a performance carry in the companies. So we are actually investing in the companies themselves as a management.
Okay, you got it. Please have the answer. You can continue. Sorry for interrupting, but we do have 3 more minutes left.
Okay, so the myths were the consumption of cannabis by children would increase. Wrong. There's research across the world. I'm not only talking Canada, I'm talking Europe, Australia. Consumption of cannabis amongst children goes down because it's not hiding away.
It's not cool.
With the other myth was, another outcome was you'd have accidents. The truth is the consumption of alcohol goes down, accidents drop. And in the long term, I think the alcohol industry is incredibly threatened by cannabis. But like good businessmen, they're investing in cannabis.
On that point, we didn't mention it, but the Stell has just bought into a local cannabis brand. And in fact, Canopy Growth, the world's biggest cannabis company, was bought by Constellation Brands, who are a provider. Yeah. So there is definitely a shift from alcohol to cannabis, especially around the millennial age. And I think that's partly also because of the health reasons. And tobacco is being affected. They're very aware of hemp, smokables, and the whole market coming in. And there's a worldwide movement to health and wellness that's driving from alcohol and tobacco to cannabis as well. And is a wellness product.
And boosting new industries. Most people think when they think cannabis, they think smoking.
we are out of time. It is 12 o'clock. So if you have anything else you'd like to inform, if you'd like to put any links, then anyone who needs to leave can leave. And then we can continue the conversation for anyone who wants to actually remain on the webinar. So what would you?
I've only got one thing to say. Help us build this industry, invest in our fund, and you will be assured of not only good returns, you'll be doing something socially good.
So please go to the website silverleafinvestments.co.za, participate on our blog, and if you'd like to invest, the email address again is invest@silverleaf.co.za, silverleafinvestments.co.za.
So thank you everyone from the webinar of Silverleaf Investments 12J Venture Capital Fund. The new green gold is here, and we look forward to exploring it. I'm Yao from New Age Cannabis Podcast. Follow us on all your favorite social media at New Age Cannabis PC on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And for anyone else who has any more questions, you can post it in the chat, and we'll be continuing the chat now. So thank you everyone who's attended.
We also have
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We also have a battle cry, and that is that we should make hemp while the African sun shines.
I like that. So Pierre, yes, you can continue for those who are staying on the webinar. I cut you off for the second time. I apologize.
Yeah, I was chatting a little bit about the myths. Yeah, they're slowly being unraveled. You know, the World Health Organization only late last year recognized that cannabis has any benefit to humankind. On the other hand, we're getting research coming out of incredible benefits. We're even getting research coming out saying that the South African land-based strains are even more effective for addressing certain diseases. So we have fear about increasing crime. It doesn't happen. We have fear about addiction. Cannabis is not addictive. We have fear about accidents and drunken driving because they're under the influence. It does not happen. Every one of the fears and myths that were put forward by the anti-lobby groups, and trust me, it's not about South Africa. America's going through it. Canada went through it. Europe's going through it. All of those fears have been addressed.
But having said that, I think there does need to be a conscious element and an education element to it, because in my experience and in my view, it's exactly the same as alcohol. If I give you a bottle of vodka and you drink half a bottle of vodka, you can't blame the vodka. It's about a dosage thing. You know, so we're talking adult use. It's about the right dose for the right condition and also the right strains. You know, there's this whole thing about paranoia, people getting paranoid from cannabis, and it leads to psychosis and schizophrenia. And there are, I wouldn't say dangers, but there are things that people need to be aware of, and evidence that education needs to come.
And the key point there, Cliff, is absolutely critical. We need to put this on the table. This is not a free-for-all. When we say open the market, we don't mean unregulated. Okay. It's like saying alcohol is now completely unregulated and you can open a bottle store at a junior school. You can't do that. So what we need to understand is that with regulation comes quality control, and there's certain organizations like SAPRA whose primary objective is to protect the public. And we can't wish them away, and we shouldn't wish them away. We must address this issue of quality control. We have the fastest growing group of cannabis consumers are the agents, but they're getting their medicine delivered by a guy around the corner, and it's got inherent dangers. So we need to address that issue and not assume we are arguing free for all. We're not.
Very key point. Very important point. But in terms of the different government organizations, right now they don't seem to be talking to each other at all. So at what point do you see them actually coming together to assist the industry in moving forward? Because obviously that would be one of the biggest bottlenecks over and above the fact that legislation doesn't allow. If they don't know how to speak to each other, then we'll always be at sixes and sevens from the commercial side to actually try and get the industry moving. So how best do you think it would be for government to structure themselves to get cannabis in the right space? Should it be a single department, or should it be each department still running its own cannabis?
Okay, so again, a bit of a hot potato. We have an interministerial committee that's supposed to coordinate across departments, but it is completely ineffective. We have a government that is approaching it from a position of fear. So the first person to be asked is justice.
Then they come up with these crazy cannabis laws where police are coming to measure my plants and count them.
They shouldn't even be in the equation. Then the next people to be asked are health. Okay, but I'm growing hemp for carpets. What's it got to do with health? So we've got some issues, and I am truly sympathetic to government. We've had issues with COVID, but the other side of it is they really need to get their act together, and it needs to be an interministerial. My personal opinion, this should be driven by trade and industry. This is a crop. This is a business. This is an economic opportunity. It's a job creation opportunity, and all the others should take a back seat. That's my view. So we appeal for coordination, but I'm going to say it again. The private sector also needs to get its act together. We had certain industry organizations that, quite frankly, embarrassed the sector. We need to also get our act together and coordinate our efforts. We need to get proper lobby groups. And if need be, we need to mobilize the people of this country and make government listen.
So there's a question from Jeff again. Given the constraints around fundraising and maximum percentage of the fund allowed in a single investment, would you be seeking to invest alongside other funds in large investments of 50 million or more?
Absolutely. In fact, I had a meeting this morning with the fund. We have limits, but we have expertise. A lot of other people have a desire to enter this industry. It's a new industry. It's a sexy industry. It's a high growth industry, but they don't have the expertise. So we could act as the managers, the due diligence partners, but we are constrained because of the rules of the fund that we definitely want to invest with any other funds. And if there are any other funds out there, please be in touch with us. We would love to meet with you and discuss that.
And a question from Kyle. What about the tax implications on cannabis? Given that the biggest competition to tobacco companies is illicit trade due to steep sin taxes, how will cannabis manage itself through the black market, similar to what's happening in California specifically?
Okay, so let's split the taxes. There's income tax and there's excise sin tax. Okay, sin tax only applies to smoking. Cannabis is not about smoking. That's one delivery mechanism for one part of the market. Let's talk income taxes. Imagine, put a value on 30% of the world's cannabis comes from the Transvaal or South Africa, Southern Africa. The income tax is phenomenal. One state has done over $1 billion in revenue to the state. Okay, so we need to talk about income tax, and we need to bring the illicit market into the market, and they must pay VAT. They must pay income tax, and the impact on the government will be phenomenal. And our government needs income tax right now. So if for no other reason, let's get this industry going, because we need the fiscus. We need to fuel the economy, and we need money into the fiscus.
And foreign direct investment.
I'm sure our current finance minister, Tito Mboweni, is very happy to hear that, because he does have a few farms himself. So I'm sure he's very interested.
He's an advocate.
He is a big advocate. And there's a thank you here from Linda saying thank you. Thank you. This is great, informative platform. Thank you so much for this. So she's just thanking you guys for all the information that you've given you today.
Okay, can I just say, based on the response we got, it's overwhelming. And I must say again, it is just fantastic that so many people, so little notice, made time to attend. And we haven't even looked at the YouTube and Facebook numbers. But we'll do this more often. Where I think we'll set up just informal chats where we can just talk about the issues that we're all grappling with. So I think this is the beginning of a good thing created by you guys. Thank you.
Or sign up to our podcast. But there's another question here from Colin. Does the investor have an opportunity to exit at a predetermined formula? Is the deal part loan in risk capital? Is there an evergreen market offtake with Silverleaf if they invest?
Sure, that's a there are no fixed returns. We promise a return. There is no fixed formula the way we can invest the returns we expect. We're not a bank. We don't invest with debt.
This is not loans, this is equity investments.
Yeah, we're going for equity investments, and the return will be based on the life cycle of the business. So don't think that every business will be ready for exit in 5 years. Plan longer than that, but always remember the American money is coming. So I strongly suspect we're going to have exits.
Just to talk about exits, that's a very key thing we haven't touched on. So There are a couple of exit options. One of them would be ultimately when the fund is, use the word when the fund is successful, there's a possible alt-X listing, so listing on the stock exchange makes it very liquid and very tradable. And there's also management buyout opportunities and trade opportunities where the qualifying companies get sold into the industry into other companies.
So sorry, can I just speak here? It's not exits for the investments, it's exit in the investment. So we buy a qualifying company, an American company comes along and says, I want a retail operation. They go straight to Africa and they say, I don't care what you want, here's the check, I want your business, because they want the footprint. So we can exit our actual businesses before 5 years, but the investors, the money people who put the money in, won't get their money back. Okay.
That's not to say that they can't.
By exiting an investment, we get liquidity. Once we've got liquidity, we can then exit the people who gave us the money.
So with the rate of growth of cannabis, and I think they've done this in New York somewhere, they've actually set up a cannabis exchange. So is that somewhere that you guys will also be looking at and setting up a full exchange, not just a fund itself, where you can trade, a lot more people can trade a lot more freely and money can be can flow a lot more easily, if you will.
Yeah, I think there are a number of exchanges. So we already have a company called Meta Capital, okay, and they invest in multiple 12Js. So that's one entry point, multiple funds. Then there's an exchange like a commodity exchange, okay, and that's something we look at really carefully because we need to make sure that our farmers are treated properly and they get the fair share of the value at the end market. Because the criminal thing is I grew up in the Eastern Cape. You could buy a packet like this for, choose a number, 100 Rand, and then you go to Amsterdam and that same packet is 10,000 Rand, and you're going, who's making the money here? It's not the farmer. So we've got to fix it up. So there's a commodity exchange area, and whether there's a Canadian stock exchange where you can trade listed stocks, and Cliff mentioned Altex. So I think the industry is going to mature. So you, like Bitcoin, you now have a Bitcoin exchange. So I think it's a possibility, but I wouldn't count on it in the short term.
I am also in touch with.
Sorry, there's a question from Colin. Can you raise capital from USA 501c funds?
No, you can only raise from 501b. No, I'm joking. I've got no idea what you're talking about. So let me answer that. We, as a fund, are targeting South African taxpayers, but it doesn't preclude a foreign fund coming along and saying, listen, we like what you're doing and treating us like a venture capital and putting money into our fund. Of course we can. Alternatively, we invest and we bring another fund to co-invest. That was a question you asked me. I personally think that the opportunity for this business is phenomenal because a lot of foreign people are scared of Africa. And they're going to want to work with trusted companies, and they're going to look at the environment, and they're going to go Silverleaf, and they're going to come to us. So we're really hoping that happens in a slightly different way.
Okay. Sorry, if you were about to say financial.
No,
okay. If there are no more questions, do you guys have anything else you'd like to address? We are 12 minutes over. I think we have pretty much covered everything that we wanted to cover in the webinar, unless there's anything else you guys would like to put forward. Or unless there are any other questions from anyone watching the webinar. No questions. So if you guys want to invest, just note this, we will be having a show called Stoner's Den, very similar to Dragon's Den, where you can bring your ideas and Pierre and Cliff will sit and judge them. So that's the idea that we have. Look out for that, guys. It's going to be lots of fun. But if there's no other questions, thank you guys very much for attending this webinar, and we hope to see you around soon. There are thank yous from Bronwyn and Colin and a few others here on Monica and a few others.
Cheers, Bronwyn.
So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.